Talon Desert Warriors. I had to stifle a giggle when I pulled the trigger. You see, we had watched them for hours now. The golden roaring dunes were utterly empty, a golden sweeping canvas from horizon to horizon. This is what their senses told them. This is what their senses told them. And so, the little blue Tau had their fish ships ply the air, to be certain. They are thorough at least, even if inept. For they spent the next 4 hours moving dunes, flattening an area, compacting the sand, erecting their tents, their new makeshift homes. For it is hot in the sun, no? Their base covered in one of the first things they brought down after their landing site was prepared. A massive generator for power, then a shield. Its strange light swayed as it shot up and then expanded to create a field over the base area, a shade. But with the heat haze, it looked more like a magical palm tree. The small blue ones, wandering around under its shade, were almost comical, if they were not vile Xenos. So, we decided to introduce them to the wonders of a night under the skies. We could not allow them to have their first night under the stars without a proper appreciation of them. Romantic of us, I know, but we were nothing but welcoming guests. Thus it was that when the sun finally dipped below the horizon, and the small blue devils entered their bubbles, that my friends and I, we pulled our triggers. Shots rang out in the night, and each of their little bubbles began to slowly blow out their air and fizzle into glorified sleeping bags. I would hate to think that their shield was only against the sun, for here, on the rolling dunes, it gets so very, very cold at night. Their fish ships buzzed out like wasps when their nest had been kicked over, but they passed over us without incident. Welcome to Alaban 5, Xenos. See you in the morning. I doubt you will see us, but we will definitely see you. Welcome, gentle listener. I'm Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the important factions and forces of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we are to take a brief look at the Tallarn Desert Warriors, a regiment of renown, one may say, as they are some of the most skilled warriors under the banners of the Astra Militarum, the Imperial Guard. As with so many of the very best of the armies of the Imperium, they have a very specific niche in which they excel. Their world is a dry and dusty place, a verdant planet, smashed by the vicissitudes of war. Its people rugged survivors and dogged enemies, perfectly equipped to take on forces many times their number in complex wars of cat and mouse. And so, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, Tallarn. The regiments drawn from Tallarn consist of mobile guerrilla fighters, as evasive as they are opportunistic. They are masters of hit-and-run warfare, striking a killing blow at the heart of an enemy formation before returning to their own lines, prepared to pounce once more. The people of Talon are extremely resourceful and pragmatic. They are patient, determined, and utterly ferocious in pursuit of their enemies. The once fertile planet of Tallarn was all but destroyed during the Horus Heresy, when the Iron Warriors' traitor legion launched a surprise attack upon it. Thousands of virus bombs rained down upon the surface of Tallarn, and many of its people died whilst attempting to escape the devastation. When the surviving populace emerged from environmental shelters hidden deep beneath the surface weeks later, their world was unrecognizable, the deadly attack leaving it a barren, desolate wasteland. The Iron Warriors then launched an invasion onto the planet, but instead of a dead world, the traitors encountered fierce resistance from the remaining Tallarns. Residues of the lethal virus that ravaged Tallarn were still present on the world's surface, making it virtually impossible for infantry to operate outside of protective shelters. The Battle for Tallarn, as this conflict would later be known, was therefore the largest tank engagement in Imperial history. Vast reinforcements were directed to Tallarn by both sides, enormous resources squandered fighting over a devastated world of no notable strategic worth. During the months that followed the Chaos invasion, more than 10 million armoured units crashed over the shifting dunes of the planet's blasted surface. The Tallarns rarely met the invaders in open battle, preferring to strike from the flanks and dodging the strongest elements of the Chaos battle line. To this day, the Tallarns have a well-deserved reputation for hit-and-run warfare. Over the following centuries, the final remnants of the virus expired, but Tallarn was irrevocably changed. Deserts of sulphurous sand now stretched from pole to pole, and all water had disappeared except for a thin layer in the atmosphere. No vegetation and few animals remained on the wind-swept surface. The Tallarns lived, as they continue to do, in doomed towns or caverns hollowed out from the planet's rock, where they are protected from the corrosive sandstorms that can strip a man's flesh from his bones. Tall vapor traps were constructed, channeling what water could be extracted into subterranean holding tanks. A complex system of tunnels was eventually excavated to facilitate travel between domes. As a consequence, the Talon regiments have adapted to fight in these confines as expertly as they fight on the exposed surface of a planet. Never has the vaunted mobility of the Talons been of more use than now, as growing warp storms continue to claw at the worlds of the Imperium. On battlefields throughout the galaxy, the armies of the Imperium are stretched to breaking point. Few Militarum regimentos share the skill of the Talon Desert Raiders infantry regiments at fighting across multiple fronts, or the ability of their armoured regiments at rapidly redeploying their forces to outflank and annihilate their enemies. Fighting alongside Guilliman's Indomitus Crusade, the Talons have also been used as diversionary forces, assaulting lightly fortified moons and orbital platforms within enemy territories. When the foe sends in reinforcements, the Talon forces withdraw to strike new targets. These Sirocco's, as the Talon call them, are designed to spread thin the armies of the enemy, but so effective are the guerrilla warriors at their charge that often their targets are permanently crippled. Talons have never lost their aptitude for mechanized warfare and field an abundance of armored regiments. Rather than utilizing their vehicles as a slow-moving wall of steel, as some Militarum regimentos do, Talon tank commanders pride themselves on their ability to coordinate lightning-fast spearhead assaults. Their squadrons of swift-moving tanks weaving between allied formations to strike unexpectedly at the unprepared foe. The people of Talon are master craftsmen, and their war gear is both practical and ceremonial. Indeed, the weapons of many Talon officers are inset with precious gems and metals. These officers are usually selected from amongst Talon's tribal leaders, and a coloured sash tied around every soldier's waist denotes their rank. Notable infantry regiments. Talon Desert Raiders 3rd Regiment, the Desert Tigers, fought throughout the Macarian Crusade, 392 to 399 Millennium 41, alongside the 4th and 5th Talon regiments. Subsequently, it was all but destroyed fighting under the command of the Imperial War Master Sauron. On the planet of Calastin, the regiment took part in the hard but successful war against mutant human rebels, receiving a commendation from the Inquisition. Tallarn Desert Raiders, 11th Regiment, the Dune Scorpions. The Talon 11th, together with the Talon 220th Armoured and the Talon 31st Rough Riders, were dispatched to the Calixis sector, alongside many other Talon regiments, only months after the first call for reinforcements on the Spinewood front. However, due to the vagaries of warp travel, these 3 regiments have only arrived in the last few months, the transport delayed by disruptive warp activity that saw them separated from their transport group and delayed by several standard years. Believed lost to the warp, when the 3 Talon regiments emerged at the edge of the Calth system, there was more than a little astonishment, particularly as the Talon themselves had experienced a journey only 8 days longer than expected. With reinforcements desperately needed, these regiments were immediately deployed to the front lines, and the 11th Desert Raiders, known colloquially as the Dune Scorpions, have since found themselves in a series of war zones, most recently serving as a part of the infiltration mission deployed to Maessa. Particularly known for their proficiency with ambush tactics, the Dune Scorpions have claimed as many kills with their razor-sharp curved daggers as with precise shots from their las rifles, seldom allowing their foes to see who is attacking them. Their commander, Colonel Fiora Javed, is a calm and careful woman, unwilling to act rashly to strike without considering the terrain, the enemy, and a variety of other factors. Her caution is not due to fear, as our men are quick to point out to anyone who dares imply cowardice, but the result of a keen tactical mind, unclouded by vainglory or hubris, and their victories are a testament to the value of such an approach. Talon Desert Raiders 12th Regiment fought in the Cursus War on Talon in the 40th millennium. When the Talon uncovered a mysterious chaotic artifact during the construction of an arterial tunnel on their homeworld, they unearthed the Cursus of Alganar, a legendary mythical gateway of the gods that actually served as a potent warp gate into the Imperium and the realm of chaos. This discovery forced the Eldar to act, and they attacked the Talon in full force. Before the Cursus could be sealed, the gateway opened, and the Cursus poured the indescribable minions of chaos from its warp portal. The human commander called a truce, and worked in concert with the Eldar forces to turn back and defeat the gibbering horde of demons. The Eldar departed in peace, and the peoples of both races exchanged promises of friendship, a true rarity in normal interactions between mankind and other races. Tallarn Desert Rats 16th Regiment fought the Eldar on the desert world of Holland Prime, having great difficulty dealing with the speed and flexibility of the Eldar forces. A Talon commander devised an ingenious idea to overcome this disadvantage. He ordered his regiment's chimeras to have their armor stripped down, giving his desert rats a highly mobile transport to carry them across the vast dunes of Holland Prime. The advent of this newly designed vehicle was instrumental in the defeat of the Eldar forces. Since this engagement, the Talon 16th Regiment's 1st Patrol Company has been known as the Grave Diggers. Tallarn Desert Raiders 17th Regiment fought during the Taros campaign, 998 Millennium 41. The Talon 17th Regiment had the honor of being the first Imperial troops on the ground, following the destruction of the planet's orbital defense facilities by the Raptor's Space Marine chapter. The regiment was completely destroyed during their retreat from the Tarosian capital city of Tallarn. Many of the survivors from the regiment had been scattered by the defending Tau forces and were captured. They were condemned to forced labor by working the mines of Taros. The few survivors of the regiment have managed to escape aboard the evacuation ships, were eventually reassigned to the Talon 331st Regiment. The Taros campaign ultimately ended in failure for the Imperium and a great victory for the Tau Empire. Tallarn Desert Raiders 35th Regiment. The Talon 35th is a veteran unit that is part of a reconnaissance regiment assigned to the world of Hervara, located in the Spinewood front, the Imperial war zone centered in the subsector of the Calixis sector, known as the Periphery. At the time of their deployment, They were initially well supported by a company of sentinels and a full company of rough riders mounted upon Mukali. After a year of deployment without support, the mounts for these forces, both reptilian and mechanical, had suffered serious losses. In spite of this, the Desert Raiders have shown no tendency to restrict their activities. Of the 3 Imperial Guard regiments on Hevara, they have had the greatest success against the natives, whilst also suffering the most severe losses. The Tallarn Desert Raiders 54th Regiment. The Tallarn 54th fought alongside the Steel Confessors Space Marine chapter. This chapter is known for being utterly intolerant of physical or mental weakness in others. An incident occurred when the chapter actually destroyed the Tallarn 54th for its failure to achieve objectives. Tallarn Desert Raiders 82nd Regiment. The Tallarn 82nd Regiment lost about half their number when they engaged a force of orcs. The remaining survivors were rolled into the Tallarn 892nd Regiment. Tallarn Desert Raiders 89th Regiment. The Tallarn Desert Raiders 95th Regiment was the armoured component of battle group Desert Fox that defeated the Separatists on the world of Lorthax and was ultimately incorporated as part of the 1st Tallarn Raiding Regiment. Tallarn Desert Raiders 441st Regiment fought in the Fall of Medusa 5 campaign in 999,041. The 441st Regiment was stationed alongside the heavily fortified trench line known as the Mortis Line, along with the Tallarn 442nd Regiment. The 441st was sent into the desert beyond their line to investigate strange reports of unidentified creatures who turned out to be a war of orcs. Notable armoured regiments. Tallarn 3rd Armoured Regiment. The 3rd Armoured fought during the Taros campaign as well. The 3rd Regiment was effectively destroyed during that action, having lost all of their combat vehicles and much of their equipment during the retreat from the Taurosian capital of Tarakeen. The Tallarn 3rd Armoured Regiment would be reconstituted in the aftermath. Tallarn 9th Heavy Tank Regiment. The Blue Devils. The 9th Heavy Tank Regiment is known for using primarily Baneblade Super Heavy tanks. They paint their vehicles in desert yellow with a sky blue camouflage. The commanders of this regiment are known for riding in the turret, exposing themselves to obtain a panoramic view of the battlefield, waving their curved chainswords to inspire their men to greater acts of courage. Notable Rough Riders regiments. The 31st. The 31st Tallarn Rough Riders is one of 3 Tallarn regiments along with the 11th Desert Riders and Tallarn 220th Armoured, sent to reinforce the Spywood front. Notable Tallarn battle groups. Battle Group Desert Fox. Battle Group Desert Fox was a composite unit based around the infantry of the Tallarn 95th, the tanks of the Tallarn 668th Armoured, and the mobile guns of the Tallarn 212th Artillery. The formation was constituted to wage war in the arid sulphur wastes of Lorthax against a large army of separatists, where it would spearhead Operation Umbrage. Due to administrative error, however, the column was issued without any source of fuel and had no choice but to dismount all of its vehicle crews and start the attack as light infantry. Reverting to the desert fighting traditions of Tallarn, Battle Group Desert Fox infiltrated the enemy lines and launched an entirely unanticipated attack that proved so successful it pushed back 12 Terran miles into enemy territory and wiped out the entire Separatist High Command. Following this great victory, the 3 regiments were reconstituted as the 1st Tallarn Raiding Regiment, and their vehicles were assigned to other units. End quote. And yet again, we see more of the fingerprints of the world of Dune, the desert planet, in this fighting force. For the Tallarn armies and their entire world cannot be seen as anything but a serious doffing of the cap to the world of Arrakis and its Fremen warriors. The blasted deserts, the water traps, the fiercely independent and stubborn warriors who roam its deserts and underground dwelling places, and all the tunnels in between. Tallarn warriors are a nightmare to any occupying force, a constant threat to the supply lines, elan, and even existence of any force which they engage. And for other armies, like the Tau and Eldar, their way of war is the most difficult to deal with, for they do not stand and fight, as so many try to do in the grim darkness of the future. They bleed any enemy. The one thing that neither of the aforementioned races can sustain. Their constant harassment cannot be ignored, as at any time one of them could turn into a full frontal assault. Nor are these bee stings to be ignored, as they can cripple the operations of an army in their sight. The constant war of erosion, making the enemy fight again and again over ground they thought bested, conquered, can drain even the most orderly and well-equipped army. They are an excellent tool of the Imperium, and show how its ability to produce superlative forces of a vast myriad of forms is actually the bedrock of its power. For they always have the right tool to apply, if only they can get it there on time. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to the Tallarn Desert Warriors. If so, then please do consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. If you see the worth in what we are doing, then do also consider joining our Patreon, or giving the video a share if that is beyond your present scope. It would be a great boon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.